Welcome, Deborah Mazoudier, to the Resolution Room.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Now, I was thinking about when we first met. It would have been over 20 years ago.
You've just made me really old.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. It was a long time ago, but you had been working in the tender space for another business at the time, and we actually worked in the same building, I seem to recall.
We did.
And then we worked together quite a lot in the tendering space over the years, as when I was a partner in Lawland with one of my major clients who went to tender every 3 to 5 years, generally 5 years, and you sort of didn't want to take that for granted, and we spent a lot of time.
And we won every time.
We did. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that, and I don't take that for granted. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because tendering is such a huge topic, and it's so important. It's increasingly important. I wanted to talk about some of the strategic underpinnings of tender, but I learned a lot from working with you. For example, I thought I was a good writer, but I realised there's a whole different skill set in writing for a tender, and you helped us a lot around strategic narratives and messaging. It was such instrumental in my business looking back at just making our tenders go to that next level. And I think we worked with you on a number of other tenders apart from my client, but on other as well.
And we won those too.
We did too. Thanks, Deb. We did.
There's no second place in tendering.
That's
You
right.
either win or you lose.
That's
so
exactly
you may as well
right.
win them.
So talk us through your story. I mean, I know you come from a legal family and your academic discipline was law, but you've actually been in the tendering space for quite some time.
Yeah, I'll make myself even older than you made me. I started tendering in, 2000 in international aid, in legal and governance reform. So a really substantive area. I didn't know what a tender was. Everybody that tenders falls into tendering. I was tendering for projects like the Solomon Islands Law and Justice Program. After a number of years of doing that and then managing the programs that we won, I had my first beautiful child, who is now turning 18, and I thought to myself, what am I good at? What do I do with this? Because I've got a 3-month-old and I don't want to go back to travelling around the world and doing aid work. Well, what do I do? And I realised I was really good at winning. I was never going to be the sporty person that managed to excel in the sporting arena, but I was really good at winning tenders. And so I set up, I guess, what has become Tender Plus, and it was just me. And over time, that's grown into a national business. And I've gone from international aid. I still have clients in that arena, but I've gone from international aid to, a team of 13 tendering on anything from supporting for-purpose organisations with their mission all the way through to multi-billion-dollar procurements in transport, like for the Sydney Metro and things like that, and everything in between. And, yeah, I love it. I absolutely love being a tenderer.
And it's such a specialist business. You do tenders across, and you're sector agnostic, aren't you?
We're sector agnostic, yeah. As you said, it's a multifaceted skill set rather than it doesn't really have a sectoral focus. Every single industry ends up having to tender, particularly government tenders. Obviously, they have to go out to market. All government departments at all levels, local, state, federal, have to have a value for money assessment in their procurement processes. So they put their goods and services out to tender. And, yeah, it's industry agnostic and it's a joy because the skill set covers everything from strategy through project and process management, through quality assurance, into really strong marketing and communications, into creative and persuasive writing, to stakeholder engagement, you name it, we do it. And then you still have to wrap things in a neat, tidy, well-presented graphic design bow as well. So it takes everything to be a skilled tenderer.
I love it. It's such a specialised business and you don't pretend to be all things. We are tender specialists. That's what we do.
Exactly what we are.
And it makes sense too because you touched on the fact that in the government sector, of course, they have to tender, but increasingly in private sectors as well, they're looking for transparency. They're wanting a competitive dynamic and they're I guess they want to test the market. So tender is important in that space too.
That's absolutely true. What's really interesting, in the mining industry in Western Australia, we've been supporting a client that wants to position themselves early for tenders. So they want to be on the list for private sector clients, for the big miners. They have a new way in which they're developing their products, and they didn't quite know how to bring it to the mining company's attention. And so one of the things we worked with them on was really interesting to position them. We did pitch packs for them. So they weren't really tenders. They were pre-tendering presentations that they then went and delivered, and they were in a position to influence the way the tender actually came to market. And when the tenders did come out, it came to market in a way that actually favoured our client. So yes, private sector tendering is just as real as government sector tendering.
I really love that, because a lot of times in tenders you really know who's well positioned and who's not. So that's great to be able to play in that space as well, helping people in the positioning.
Well, so we think of tenders in terms of a process, a linear process from pursuit to capture. But that pursuit process starts well before the tender actually drops. I often say to clients, if the tender is in your inbox and you haven't heard of it, then it's too late to bid.
That's right.
Do not bid on that tender. You have to pursue it early. You have to position yourselves, and you have to have that deep client understanding earlier than the tender. Then you execute that in the tender, because you're only going to be given a certain number of weeks to do it anyway.
Yeah, and the tenders we've won, of course, we've known all about it. So what does that tell you? When we work together, I learn a lot. What do you think are the common things that people misunderstand about your role and the specialised skill set you bring to bear in tenders?
It's really interesting. In the domestic sector, I think a lot of tender specialists come from an administrative background, and sadly, then there's some people in some organisations and industries that diminish the role, and they see it as an admin role. The funny thing is, the reason I was so keen to set up Tender Plus as a bigger business was that in international aid, it was substantive. It was always substantive. There was never this concept that you're just the submission person, you're just the person that writes the tender, you're just the one that communicates the solution. You are fundamental to winning business. And I think that's a perception that needs to be embedded across industry, that your proposal managers, your bid managers, your tender writers, your graphic designers, whatever you want to call them that are involved in tenders, are fundamental to the success of your business. Without them, you cannot win work. And they need to be respected as those professionals with this multifaceted skill set that I described before. So we're so much more than admin. I have way too many degrees, but I have a legal background. I never worked in administration. I think administration is absolutely brilliant. Two of my principals actually started off as EAs, 25 years ago, and built their careers as tenderers. So I don't know, I just think there needs to be a greater acknowledgement of the role and the role it plays in winning competitive business.
One of the things that I remember struck me when we worked together was the strategic mindset you brought to frame those early meetings we had, much more about the logistics of who's writing what paragraph, but those really early framing conversations around the strategic messaging, how much I learned.
Yeah, it's a change of mindset. So I say that tendering is an exercise in empathy. You have to put your feet firmly in the shoes of your client, and you have to somewhat diminish yourself in that and put yourself second. And the minute you have that mindset, if you then go into a strategy session where you say, okay, I know what I want to achieve as a business or an individual, but what is it my client really wants? That may mean that I have to pivot. That may mean that I have to do something that I consider business as usual differently. That may mean that I may have to offer that client something that I hadn't envisaged I was going to offer them. It also might mean I have to be humble, that I have to, in an incumbency sort of situation, that I have to actually acknowledge where I failed,
yes,
or where I was weak, or where I didn't meet expectations, and address those weaknesses and those lessons, and be brave enough to say, I heard you, I can do better, this is the way in which we will do better in the future. incumbency is such a hard place to win from if you're not willing to be humble. So it's a client-first perspective. It's an exercise in empathy. And if you don't run those strategy sessions at the beginning to put yourself in a mindset where your response and your solution, your offer to the client is all about them, you won't win. It's that simple. The world is too competitive for people that are self-oriented in tenders. You have to be client-oriented in tenders.
You're quite right. In fact, thinking it through, that really also embeds authenticity and trust in the relationship. Because the client goes, my God, they've actually listened. And so, yeah, you're right. That's about being really humble and owning that, because that's actually also your unique point of difference. You've actually got a track record with the client, so own that and don't gloss over it.
Well, own that and also demonstrate that you as the incumbent actually understand all of the risks associated with the delivery of those goods or those services. You don't want them to change horse. You want them to take the one that has done the hard yards. Yeah, so yeah, but I think even when you're not incumbent, there needs to be a humility and there needs to be a client-first approach no matter what you do.
I wanted to talk to you a bit about that and also some of the other aspects around, say, lawyers. You've worked with us quite a bit.
Love lawyers.
And there's a lot of us
I'm an ex-lawyer.
Yeah,
Love
we'll be
lawyers.
listening. What do they do better or worse than other professions in the tender space?
Oh, that's a nasty question.
That's a nasty question.
I have no problem answering it. And I think it applies to professional services as well. Honestly, it applies to all sectors. They don't go into detail enough about what is business as usual to them. So that's the humility piece. They don't come humbly to it, and they don't come with that client-centric perspective. So if we can tick that off, then I think the next thing is you need to move away from broad statements into specificity. So if you say something like, we have a great case management process, I'm going to say, great, what does that look like? Give me the 15 elements that make up that case management process. And then I'm going to say, and how do you manage all of the risks associated with that case management process? And what are the opportunities within that case management process for your client? And how do you resource that case management process? And how do you guarantee quality comes out of that case management process? And every time somebody says to me, Joe has 30 years experience in something, I say, so what? And what is the benefit of that? And what does that experience told him or her? And how does that apply in this context? So it's client mindset first. It's understanding that your business as usual needs to be defined incredibly specifically. And it's always acknowledging that every feature you put forward has to have a benefit to the client.
Yes.
If you can nail that, great. The other thing I find really funny is that lawyers know about compliance. They understand legislation. They understand how to apply case law and precedent and all sorts of stuff. And yet they're non-compliant in the tender requirement. So if a client asks you to provide 3 referees with 6 levels of detail, don't put the sentence in client references available on request. Give them the detail they want. So I've actually ironically found in professional services and law firms that they've often put together non-compliant responses.
It's ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I must say that you really hit on something for me. I remember when we worked together, I was pulling out what's left of my hair because basically,
you have plenty of hair.
Yeah, thank
it's a
you,
little
Deb.
grayer, but you have plenty of hair.
But I remember really exactly that is that we have a tendency in the profession to say we've always done it like this or motherhood statements. You really got us to drill down on specifics, case studies, examples, data points, metrics. But I remember thinking it really challenged your mindset because when you do work for a client, it's the way it's always been done and it's really hard to break it down often.
It's very hard to break it down. But what's business as usual to you is not business as usual to your client. The way you've approached it for the last 2 years might actually be incredibly innovative. You just don't realise it. Or the client might not have experienced your way of doing business. So you have to define it. Yeah? You have to define it, but in terms of benefit to them. What's in it for them? Not what's in it for me, what's in it for them.
Well, and that brings me more broadly putting tenders, not adjacent conversation, but client persuasion is definitely a case of which every professional is wanting to have that persuasive conversation with the client. And it's very much about exactly that, stepping in the client's shoes, really understanding the clients and not being the loudest voice in the room. You've got to listen really acutely to understand that.
Yeah, it's like the red chair situation, and I've done that with clients. I've actually been in a workshop where I've put a chair, usually they're not red, but I've said, this is the red chair and there is a client sitting in there and you need to talk to me as though you're talking to your client. Because I don't want to hear anything that doesn't benefit them. And it is a complete change of mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, in professional services, very much this is the way we do things. These are my clients. And so it's really about what are the client drivers, what are their pain points, what are their imperatives, and really being very specific about your processes and how you address that.
In other sectors, it's really interesting, and it probably doesn't apply quite as much in the legal sector, but it's also taking the policy parameters of why the tender exists and extrapolating back up to those policy parameters. So really saying, okay, we're going to deliver this solution for you. Let's say it's the health industry, but actually we do apply that in the legal sector as well. Let's say it's the health industry though, and these are the 5 dimensions that the government is trying to achieve greater traction in. It's taking what you're offering and showing them that the way you're going to deliver it is actually going to help them in other guises as well. Taking it back to that policy construct, that policy framework, and showing application that leads to outcomes that they're intending to deliver. It might be an indirect benefit. It potentially could be an amplified benefit beyond what they're intending. But it's realising that it's not just the tender you're responding to, it's something broader, it's something bigger.
Yeah. Tell me about your business, because I've seen it grow. I mean, it's very significant to have that number of people. How do you work within your business internally? Do you have people that do more of the strategic underpinnings, people that pull it together in terms of process and project management, or how does that play out?
I like to say that we're a team of unicorns. They're not rare after all, it seems. Look, I think we base it on passion for a certain area, on where people want to grow and learn. But at the same time, I hire people that have that multifaceted skill set. Some of whom, like me, do not have the graphic design skills. Like, give me a page of words and I'm good.
You love it.
Tell me to draw something and I just look at you sideways and go, I'll get Laura to do that for me. I think across the team we have an incredibly multifaceted skill set, and we make sure that we complement each other, because we often work, 6 or 7 of us will work at the same time on one job that might run for 8 months.
I see.
And so we need that full...
You need a collaborative project, whole of team sort
absolutely.
of approach.
Yeah, so we often have that whole of team approach, but then the real unicorns in the team are the people that can do everything. They do the strategy, they do the process, they do the coordination, they do the stakeholder engagement, they do the graphic design, they do the persuasive writing, they do the lot. And I am very, 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 very privileged to have a team that has an exceptional skill base. Each client that comes through the door, we just say, hey, what's the skill base you need? And we put that capability together for them.
Yeah, I see.
But we have a pretty unique internal culture. We have a lot of fun. Tenders are demanding, incredibly demanding.
High pressure, huh?
High pressure, deadline driven.
Yeah. Constant
small deadlines along every big deadline. And so we're kind to each other and we're kind to our clients, because there's no point in working in this sort of field and not bringing kindness to intense pressure. At the same time, very, very resilient people, very, very competitive people. We don't like to lose. I tell my clients we have no vested interest in this project except for you to win, because then we win.
Yeah.
And yet we're funny. We're funny. We have fun.
And
we have great banter.
You're so right, because you're also dealing with clients at significant pressure points and high stress often in their organisation, and perhaps tenders also can bring out a level of organisational dysfunction.
There is, in every organisation, no matter their size, and we work for some multinational organisations, there is an element of dysfunction. We say that tenders are messy because they are, because there's strategic decision making going on. There are people's jobs on the line. I remember when we worked on one of your tenders, and you said, God, if we don't get this, then people are going to be made redundant.
Absolutely.
Yeah? There's pressure. People's jobs are on the line.
Absolutely, I felt that.
I felt it. Don't worry, I felt it as well, but we won. And when people are under pressure, it's hard for them to necessarily function at their best. We also find on tenders people are out of their comfort zone. It's a specialist area, and if they don't have the support internally to deal with it, then we have to bring that, and we have to bring best practice to the table. But that's why we're here, and we enjoy it. And I've watched clients like you over time. I've watched people go from strength to strength. We've had clients that when they first hired us to do everything. And now they just say, hey, would you mind just reading the executive summary and just seeing if we're going in the right direction? It is a joy to see that capacity built.
Yeah.
While working with a client.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I felt, as time progressed, you learn a lot that you took on, that you brought to bear in other persuasive writing. Yes, I certainly learned a lot because I was particularly in the early days, I was really hands-on, which was great because it meant that I probably cemented some of those learnings better.
And then I had to tell you to let it go.
Yeah, you had to tell me to let it go.
Let it go.
I know. If a lawyer or lawyers are losing tenders commonly, what would you say would they need to look at?
Okay, so they need to look at their bid, no bid process first. I remember when we first started working together, there was something like 5 organisations that had tendered previously for the job you were incumbent on. And when we put in that next bid, there were 29 applications and you were still successful. It is more and more and more competitive. So the first thing they need to do is look at whether they should be bidding in the first place. Yeah, are they in any position whatsoever to understanding the exact demands of those clients and what they want? Do they have the resources to invest in the tender? Because if they think that it is an administrative exercise where you just chuck a few CVs together, they're kidding themselves. 3 elements to it. It has to be strategic, it has to be compliant, it has to be compelling. And you need resources and investment to achieve that. And then the other thing is everything that I said before to you. It's that level of specificity. It's a willingness to really explain each and every step in your process and the benefit. And it is not a marketing exercise. It's a specialist area and it needs to be addressed as such.
Specialisation is so important. So in this area, no topic would be complete without looking at the disruption of AI. I'm keen to pick your brain on that.
Fun and games.
Yeah. So as a consequence of AI in terms of generative AI and its ability to write, do you think we're going to see...
It doesn't write well.
Yeah, it does not write well. Let's cover that off.
Yeah.
And do you think it's going to lead to people, noticing quite quickly what lacks authenticity and lacks a compelling narrative because you can see it?
I mean, yes.
Particularly the way it writes now.
Just a very broad answer, yes. But if we go back a step, I think AI has a lot that it can give to tendering and to writing, but it's not human. And I think that is the issue at its core. I said tendering is an exercise in empathy. Well, AI is not going to empathise. AI is not going to understand your client. AI is not going to be in a position to know whether you have the resources available to actually develop the content. So it comes down to the human factor. If we look at the tender process and we look at how AI could be applied, you could ask AI to analyse the tender documentation and to tell you the top 5 thematic areas that are emerging in it. And that might give you a little bit of insight into client need. But you're still going to have to support that with your own relationships and your own research into the client. And nothing is going to surpass having a relationship with someone, or at least having had a meeting or a coffee and trying to understand their needs, their pain points, their drivers, their objectives. So you can certainly use it to either give you a starting point or to support your thoughts on what the client drivers actually are. In terms of the administrative layers of tendering, AI can produce an acronym list for you. You don't have to go through your document and find every acronym. You can ask it to find every acronym in the document and to give you the full version of that acronym in a table. Yay! Because I don't want to do that. So yay, let it do that. In terms of writing, it depends on the quality of the information you are feeding it in the first place.
Absolutely.
So if you put bad quality information in, it will spew bad quality information back out at you. And it is inaccurate and you will have to check for accuracy. So for me, it might give you we call it a bronze, silver and gold draft. On your bronze draft, it might give you a solid structure, for example.
Yeah.
But you still have to put the human effort into it. You still have to make sure it is compliant. You still have to make sure that it is reflective of client drivers and need. And on most tenders, you're developing your solution as you go. AI is not going to know about that. You have to draft that from scratch.
It's very evolving, isn't it? You have a go and you think, oh, this doesn't work. And maybe on that point, it can help you supplement your thinking and maybe almost use it as a brainstorming to sometimes grab a few other ideas. But I do think you're right. I certainly can't see your role being disrupted anytime soon because that broader strategic narrative, the human connection.
I've hired more writers.
Yeah, in this space. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, and clients have said to me, so we want to use AI, so that'll reduce your scope, won't it? And I said, no, because I know the quality of information that you're going to feed it. So unless we improve the quality to begin with, you're not going to diminish the scope. You're not going to save money in that respect. But I do think it has a place to play. Maybe not quite in the writing field, but that deeper research, the ability to support you in your analysis, it has a role to play, but I'm still exploring it. And I think it comes down to how well people actually prompt it, but then how well they build off what comes out. The other day I actually used it, but I used it to do an assessment of a couple of old tenders because I was just curious to see if it was an evaluation panel, how would it have responded to the tenders that we drafted a couple of years ago for a particular RFP. So I fed it the RFP and I fed it the response document and I asked it to do an evaluation and to provide strengths, weaknesses and suggestions for improvement from the document. It was really interesting because it actually came back that in terms of compliance, it was fully compliant. In terms of strategy, there was an evident strategy in the document and it was well articulated, but then it actually came back and made some really insightful suggestions on where some of the drafting could have been strengthened to further support that. So I think it has its place, but I also think it needs to be wielded by the right person.
Yeah, with the right prompts. And you were
with the right intent.
And because you know tendering so well and you're familiar with the RFP and the response and the assessment criteria, it made sense to you because so that's really
But I wouldn't provide that analysis to a client, for example, because it can't empathise. So I need to bring that human element. I need to say, okay, we have reflected those drivers. Unless you feed it to it, you've done that pursuit analysis in the first place. You feed it into the AI and say, these are the drivers. Does this draft currently reflect what we know to be the drivers? So you've got to tell it what to do rather than relying on it to tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's been a great conversation, Deb. Thank you so much for your time.
We're ending on AI.
We're ending on AI, but I don't want to end on AI, you see.
Okay.
So I want to talk about you a bit more. Where to for you now in terms of Tender Plus? Continuing?
Gosh, where to for now? I don't know. My focus this year is to get my kid through year 12.
Yes.
So where to? Just more great tendering. We're working on some amazing property development stuff. The Olympics are coming.
Yeah.
So, really excited to have some clients that are going to be working in that space. One of the most exciting things we're doing is about 12 months ago, we set up Purpose Plus by Tender Plus, which is our arm that supports for-purpose organisations.
That's fantastic.
So it's low fee structure. We're supporting really important social and community missions. We're helping smaller and large not-for-profits and charities get funding to support their aims. And I know the team really we like to contribute to the big infrastructure stuff and the big projects, but we also love to feel we're making a contribution to community. So I think keeping on building Purpose Plus and providing that to the team as an avenue for them to make a contribution as well. That's part of it. But I'm just going to keep on keeping on. Keep on keeping on.
Well, thank you so much, Deb. I really appreciate the work we did together.
Thank you.
And I'd highly recommend you in terms of getting your tenders to the next level in your team. So thanks for coming. Great conversation.
I loved it. Thanks very much for having me.
All the best.
Cheers. Bye.